All right, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It, the famous Daf Yomi shiur of Ben Sion Lang. We're learning today Maseches Yevamos, Daf Lamed 34. We have a wonderful shiur for you today. We're going to discuss some of the greatest issues related to most people's favorite topic. I'm not allowed to say this on camera. If you haven't guessed it, it involves a bedroom, it involves a person of the other gender. Um, and it's actually the word of the other gender, the opposite, let's say, sex. We're going to be talking a lot about that today, the different types, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. How does it relate to Maseches Yevamos, you're wondering? It does relate to it because the Mishnah we're going to discuss today has a unique case where discusses whether you could become pregnant. It seems to imply you could become pregnant from the first relations, the first sexual act you have with a woman. She loses her virginity. Could she become pregnant from that act? The Gemara seems to say you can't. So what happens for a Mishnah that indicates that you can? That's how it ties into the Mishnah. A very interesting Mishnah today about people that switch wives. The Gemara says we're talking about, obviously it was a mistake. It didn't happen on purpose. Um, we're going to discuss, and in Ben Sion, we're going to discuss the practical ramifications of something which I think really needs to have more discussion talked about. When you go to chassan classes or even college classes, they don't really tell you anything about this. In my experience, I was a chassan once. Uh, my wife was a kala once, but they discussed it's not even brought up, this type of relations called bia shloka darka. It means the man going in from the behind the woman, not from the front. Um, are you allowed to do it? Not allowed to do it? I'm going to weigh in on that today. The Rishonim talk about this based on this Daf and Gemara. There's two explanations in Tosfos whether you're even allowed to do it or not, or it's aser or it's mutter. The consensus among most Rabbanim, Shulchan Aruch Paskins, I think, to be machmer on this. He does bring both opinions. At least the Torah brings both opinions. It's a big machlokas in the Rishonim. The Rosh talks about this. It's not so simple that it's aser. Everyone thinks, at least most from people think it's aser. Not so simple that it's aser. And in Iyot Ben Sion, I'm going to prove to you that it's 100% mutter. Um, Am I allowed to do this? Yeah. You know what? That's the great part about YouTube. Some people complain about social media that it sort of represents only one opinion. It's not bipartisan. It only gives you one ideology, one line of thought, and doesn't represent a fair mix of the right and the left. But leaving social media aside, that's political issues which affect everyone. I'm not weighing in whether social media contribute the detriment of free speech. That's not what I'm here to do. Um, but the great thing about YouTube as a social media platform is that, as opposed to writing a book, let's say, if you write a book in Judaica stores, you publish a book in Judaica stores, you put it there, and you write something controversial, which the leading Rabbanim don't agree with, or which is taboo and can't be talked about, and Art Scroll and whoever else publishes these books have only one opinion. If you think that, what is it called? It's called, stupid fly. It's called uh, cancel culture. Cancel culture is when you cancel the other opinion without even giving a reasonable reason why you're canceling the other opinion. Yes, I believe it goes on terribly, to a great extent, in the yeshivish and ultra-Orthodox world, even the Orthodox world. There's cancel culture. There's things you're not allowed to say, taboo, without giving a reason, without giving a source or a reason why you can't talk about these things, why you're not allowed to talk about these things. There was a book printed, I think, by the son of Yaakov Kamenetsky a number of years ago, The Making of a Gadol. It was banned. Why? I didn't even read the book. I couldn't get my hand on a copy of it. I think that a book sell on the black market for like $1,000. Um, I don't think it was anything terrible. They said things about Ron Color and Rav Yaakov Manesky used to play chess or something like that. I don't even know. They used to read literature, Russian literature. Um, are these things terrible? Is the Torah asked for these things? No. But we can't think of our Gedolim that they actually read Russian literature. They have to only be learning Torah the whole time. They have to be not human. I mean, it's cancel culture. It's a big problem. But that's the great thing about YouTube is that YouTube is not does not go into these things. They give you an open forum to talk about whatever you want about Judaism. That's not something you're safe on YouTube. They don't have an opinion one way or the other about this. Not saying they have an opinion about other things also. YouTube happens to be a platform which I believe does not really engage in cancel culture. It really does give you freedom of speech. It does. I'm not the sponsor for YouTube, but I really believe it. Of all the social media platforms, YouTube is probably the most fair. It does give both sides of the story, both sides of the narrative. And for this thing, for sure, you can say pretty much whatever you want. I put out some videos out there, which for sure, if they were put in book form, they were sold in Judaic stores, they would remove promptly from the shelves. But that's why I'm on YouTube. I can say whatever I want, whenever I want. You can choose to listen or not, but I think people like to hear an honest opinion, whether or not they believe in it or not. They like to hear an honest opinion as long as it can be backed up, and I'm going to back it up from the Gemara, the source itself. Let's start from the Mishnah here. Lamed Gilon Beis. The Mishnah says, "Shnayim shekitshu shnei nashim." Two men are makadish, two ladies. Uvashas knisasan lechopa hichlifu shalzeh lezeh. Sounds like a story out of Parshas by Yetze, where Rachel and Leah got switched. Not exactly. The two women got switched, right? Reuven with Makadish, Rachel. Shimon with Makadish, Leah. And then Rachel and Leah got switched. And they were Mekudeshes to the other one. Now they're together. There was the night of the wedding. They were bowl each other. So they're bowling Eshes. She was Mekudesh to the other man. So if these two people were actually brothers, not only be liable for sleeping with a married woman, you'd be liable to sleeping with your brother's wife, which is kares. We learn these two women were not only their brothers, but also two sisters. We have a third chatas for sleeping with your wife's sister. If they were nidos when you slept with them, mishum nida b'chayev a fourth chatas. Each one b'chayev a fourth chatas mishum nida. Now, eventually, the Gemara is going to explain this was done b'shogeg, so we're allowed to return the woman to the men. Right, a woman who is nensa, who is boel someone else, even though we learned that an adulteress, a woman who commits adultery, she's also to her husband. That's only done b'mezid. The b'shogeg, she's muteris, so this was done b'shogeg. We're going to learn. So therefore, the 3 months we keep them, we want to know whose child it is, because after 3 months you can tell whose child, if she's pregnant or not, to know whether who the child is from. Is it from the husband she was boel, the man she was boel was not her husband, or from the man we're going to let her remarry, we're going to let her marry for the first time, a real husband. Shemu Bora said, now I guess with pregnancy tests now, I guess it'll be earlier. I don't know why it says 3 chadashim. Nowadays you can find out, we don't rely on pregnancy tests, I don't know, after like 4 weeks. After a couple weeks, not a couple weeks, I don't know, a couple days. Vayu ktanos, shenru yasiyalid, if these two girls were ktano, they're minors, they weren't gedolos, machzino san miyad, then they can be ketanos can't become pregnant. We learned, so therefore they can go return to their husbands immediately. If they were daughters of kohanim, they become pasul from the truma. A daughter of a kohen, she's pasul. She becomes nivola, even b'shogeg, to someone she's not married to a man, to a woman. She's a woman, and she's married to one man, and she's nivelas from another man. Even b'shogeg, the pasul her min truma. They discuss why it doesn't pass her min kahuna legamre. Shkimo chalala, not truma. At least she loses the ability to truma. She's not considered a bas kohen. They can eat truma. So as hichlifu media b'sheiaskina, it sounds like hichlifu sounds like they switched on purpose. They're mekudesh the one, and they committed adultery on purpose. Risheiaskina, Mishnayos generally don't talk about rishoyim. V'su had the time Rabbi Chia harikan sheisrei chatos. Rabbi Chia taught about this Mishnah. There's 16 chatos, right? There's 2 men and 2 ladies, right? Each of them is chayav 4 chatos if all the conditions are met, right? They're sisters, they're brothers, and they are nida. So then a man is chayav 4 chatos, and the woman are also chayav for erva or rayas. The woman are also chayav. So that's what Rabbi Chia says. Even Mazin, Mika Karban. Chata is only for shogig, not a Karban. Rabbi Huda Tani Huchlafu. So you have to say, then the word Hachlifu is not the correct word. Really, it should be Huchlafu, that were switched by mistake. Hakanam Rizar makes sense. A proof to this, if they're Ktanos, where they're not going to become pregnant, so then you can return them right away. Maybe Mazin, Misharya. If we're talking about they did it on purpose, to give an adultery on purpose, how, right? Are they allowed to be returned? We know even the Ashes Israel, if she commits adultery, she's ushered to her husband. Whereas halokash, that's not a proof. Pito iktana onus ninu. The onus b'Yisrael mishashari, even if a ktana voluntarily submits to have sex with somebody, but she's a ktana, she doesn't understand things. She's seduced. It's called onus. It's called forcibly being taken her. It's called she did it by onus. She was raped, so to speak, because she has no das. She doesn't know what she's doing. What's the proof? The proof that we're saying that it's b'shogeg. It says that if they are of age where they can become pregnant, so we separate them 3 months, and then after 3 months we return them. If they're not pregnant, they go back to the original husband. He mazid, mishari. If they did it by mazid, is it permissible to return to the husband? Right? If you do it by mazid, you're asar Yisrael, a woman who commits adultery on purpose. She's forbidden to her husband. It must be that the correct version of our Mishnah is huklafu, that it was a mistake. They became switched by accident. Top of Lamadal and Aleph. Man haitana the isla isra kol of isra mosiv isra basachas. Now we said each person is chayav 4 chatos. So if you're going to assume that you're chayav 4 chatos, in our case, you're going to have to subscribe to the fact that isra chal isra, not only by Isra means of Isra Kol, not only means of Isra Osif, but also by means of Isra Basachas. Why? Why is that true? Because when you marry the lady, right, and she's your brother's wife, your brothers that marry her, so the Isra of Ashes Isham and Ashes Ach come at the same time. Then when you marry, a second brother marries. And then the second brother marries the sister, so he becomes usher not only to her but to all her sisters, more than just Reuben and Shimon. Shimon marries Leah, Reuben married Rachel, and Shimon married Leah. But Shimon's usher now to Rachel and Leah. She has more sisters. She has Bilhah and Zilpah. She has more sisters. So then she has more sisters. So therefore, that's considered Isser Kolel, because it includes on you more people. Not only you also to the sister, you also to her other sisters also. So therefore, it's Chal also. And then she becomes a Nida, right? When she becomes a Nida, so then that's Isser Mosif, because she becomes Usher not just to you're not just Usher Nida, but she's using the Usher to the husband. Isser Nida, when she becomes a Nida, she becomes Usher not only to another man, but she becomes Usher to her husband also. So therefore, it's Isser Mosif. It's a more inclusionary Isser for you yourself. So therefore, it's Chal Isser Chal Isser. You see, first Isser Basachas, then you see Isser Kol and Isser Mosif. So our Tana holds of all of them. I'm Rabbi Yehuda, I'm Rabbi Meir. He must Rabbi Meir. There's a case where a person can eat one piece of food, and he's chayav 4 chatos and 1 karban asham. What's the case? Tamei she'achal chaylev. He's a person who's tamei. He's tamei lameis. Let's say she'achal chaylev, eat chaylev, right? Which is forbidden fats of an animal. Who knows, Sarah? And it's kudshim that was left over past the time. Minam okdashim. It's kudshim, like we just said. It's kudshim, and like you only have a certain amount of time to eat kudshim. Like a shlam, you have 2 days and 1 night. Other animals only 1 day and 1 night. So it's left over past the time you can't eat. That's no sar. That's also karis. Yom Kippur, we ate it on Yom Kippur. Rameir Omer, Ma'isa Shabbos, was given 5 chayav. Rameir adds on that if it was also Shabbos, you did hatzah, you swallowed it. So while you were walking, you ate it in one place and you swallowed it in another place. So you're chayav because of transporting. The Racham say to Rameir, it's not included. It doesn't make sense to include that because that's mishum hotzah on Shabbos and not mishum the achila. You're chayav mishum the Shabbos. We're talking about how many things you're chayav for the achila. Rameir counters saying that you're chayav when you swallow it. That's when you're chayav. The Rabbanan would say that the Isser starts from the transportation, it's not just the end point when you're swallowing it, it's the whole transportation. So therefore, it's not just the achila, it's the whole transporting, which makes you chayiv. Anyway, Rav Meir definitely agrees with the ratio that you're chayiv at least 5. Rav Meir aliba deman. So anyway, in this case, how would you see that you're chayiv isser kolel, isser mosif, and isser basachas? I'm not going to get into it so much, but first of all, the ashram is for mukdash, and if you eat kodesh, animals that are hukdash, they're earmarked to be a sacrifice. That's meila. You chayiv an ashram for that, right? And you'll see if you go through Rashi, he explains how these isurim add on to each other. For example, if you're tamei, right? How does it start off? He says, I'm not going to go into explain. You can look in the article. He explains how this is Isser. It subscribes to all Isser Mosiv, Isser Kolel, and Isser Basachas. So the Gemara says, Rameir Liba Deman. Who's Rameir going according to? Liba Rabbi Yeshua. If he's going according to Rabbi Yeshua, it's Machlokas. We'll see that Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer. Hamar Tabadar Mitzvah Potter. If you make a mistake while you're doing a mitzvah, right? What's the case over here on Mishna? He's doing a mitzvah. He's getting married to a woman. Rambam says getting married to a woman. It's Daschala Mitzvah Puravu. It's right. You're Yisas on the chuppah is the bia. You're kind of mitzvah Puravu Nisuin. So if you tabadar mitzvah, how can you be chayav achatas? You made a mistake. You're potter from achatas. Elali with the Rebbe Lezer. Must be according to Rebbe Lezer. A whole tabadar mitzvah, you make a mistake when doing a mitzvah, you're still chayav achatas. You say olam ali with the Rebbe Yeshua. You say Rebbe Meir's our Mishna is going even according to Rebbe Yeshua. Kikam Rebbe Yeshua tabadar mitzvah potter. Hani mil gabay tinokos the man of bohol. The case Rebbe Yeshua and Rebbe Lezer argue about. The main case is by a bris milah on the 8th day. When you make a mistake and you give him a bris milah on Shabbos and it's not the 8th day, only on Shabbos, only if Shabbos is the 8th day. If Shabbos is the 9th day, it wouldn't be docha Shabbos. So therefore, this manobol you have to do exactly on the 8th day. So therefore, there's more of a reason you're going to make a mistake. So therefore, you're really making, it's not your fault that you're making mistakes. You're part of machatas. Avahai came in this manobol here. There's no rush to get married. So therefore, even Rabbi Yeshua Modi Yuchayev, Rei Truma, Achatas, Rei Truma, Dain's Mano Bol. But what about Truma, where there's no necessity to eat Truma right away? Pater and still Rabbi Yeshua Pater. So it's not Hayok, but Truma Mano Yeshua Ben Grosha Ben Chalutza. He finds out he's the son of a Grusha Ben Chalutza, a Kohen, and married a Grusha or Chalutza, which makes him a Chalal. He can't eat Truma. Policies him from eating Truma. Rabbi Elazar Mechayev Karen Mechomish. Rabbi Elazar says he did not mistake. He's chayiv to pay back the initial value and a penalty of a fifth more. Rabbi Yeshua Poter shows is your potter. Again, Rabbi Yeshua Potter, even though you're not bowl over there. It is bowl. He is in bewilderment over here because it's talking about Erev Pesach, all right, where you're trying to get rid of the Pesach. The Truma is actually chametz, and you're trying to get rid of it. So therefore, you want to get rid of it before the time comes where you can't eat it anymore. So therefore, you're bowl. Alternatively, you could say that the author of our Mishnah is not Rabbi Meir, it's Rabbi Shimon. And even though Rabbi Shimon only doesn't subscribe to Isra Kol and Isra Mosif to make something Isra Chal Isra, he would subscribe. We learned the Maskani yesterday, Isra Babasachas. The Maris Bishlam Akulu Mishkach Zud Shavinu Shliach V'Shavinu Shliach Paga Shliach V'Shliach. Right, you can have to find the case. We don't assume things happen exactly at the same time. So each brother was Makadesh, a sister at the same time. Two brothers Makadesh, two sisters at the same time. It's hard to, we don't possibly have at the same time. It's hard to imagine having exactly at the same time. But if two brothers set up one shliach, they set up one shliach to take money and Makadesh, each of them one sister. And the two sisters set up a shliach for them to Mekudeshes, to accept the Kedushin from the two brothers. And the shliach met each other, so therefore the shliach gave over the kesef kedushin of both brothers to the shliach of the woman at the same time. So therefore, all these surim came at the same time, right? They became Eishes Ish, they became Eishes Ach and Achas Ishto at the same time. El Nidos, but what about Nidos? How do you find that at exactly the same time? It's hard to assume. We don't assume that exactly at the moment that the shliach mekabel from the other shliach, that the woman broke out b'shas nida, they broke out at Pirsa nida. It's hard. You have Charlotte Samson, we paskin. Ela nidos heichim mishkachas. Amar Rav b'shofas mitoch gimel l'sachar shlosha asar l'chiyuve inu mitoch shneim asar l'achar shneim asar l'chiyuve inhi. He says we're talking about a case where they were menstruating for a long time. Now they were menstruating, and they were turning 13. The men were turning 13. They're becoming a gadol, and they're becoming muzar Usher and nidos, and the woman, all the mitzvos, and the girls were turning 12, which makes them chayav and mitzvos. So the day that the shluchim were makad, the shliach was makabel the kedushin the woman on behalf of the men. So therefore, the men can makadesh the ladies. So therefore, they already started before the day where they were born on the same day, basically just a year apart. The two brothers were born 2022, and two girls were born in 2000. Two boys were born in 2021, and two girls were born in 2022. And 2034, which is 13 years later for the boy, and 12 years later for the girl. That happened the day in Makadesh, and they started becoming a nida already the day before. And the nidas, they kept on menstruating until that day, until that day of Rosh Hashanah, where the boys turned 13, and the girls turned 12. So they became a gadol at that time. Exactly on that day, they're Makadesh, the shliach makabel the kedushin for the two sisters from the two brothers. So therefore, it happened exactly the same time. I think the Mepharshim say we're talking about the shlichim were makabel kedushin to mekudesh lamachar. I don't know if you have to say that. I'm giving you a simple explanation. Mafresh and Osan. So Mishna says that we separate them for 3 months. We want to make sure that one of them is not, because after 3 months, it's recognizable if you're pregnant or not. You can see it in a woman if she's pregnant or not. We have a klal that a woman can't become a virgin, can't get pregnant from her first bia. You have to break the hymen, you have to break the basulim. So you're not able to get pregnant from the first bia. It's talking about Mishna in a case where they were bald one time, they bald a second time. So from the second bia, they become pregnant. If they were bald 2 times, so instead of being chayiv, each person being chayiv 4 chatos, each person being chayiv 8 chatos, which is a total for all 4 of them 32. One for the bia rishon, one for the bia shniya. Right, this would be according to Rebbe Lezer, even though normally when you do something, Aveira, Behel Mecha, and one forgetting, right, is one mistake, and you do 2 bias, normally only chayav 1 chatas. Rebbe Lezer holds that bios mechalkos, that each bia is enough to mechayav a separate chatas. So that's the Marzias according to Rebbe Lezer. L'tamayach, the Rebbe Lezer is mechayav kol koach tuva havya. According to Rebbe Lezer, to chayav bios mechalkos, it'd be more than 8 for each person, because we learn in other places in Shas that even if anytime you get hana, it's considered a bia. So therefore, separating after the bia is over and you separate from the woman, you get pleasure when you exit from the woman, and you also get pleasure when you touch the woman. It should be chayav a lot of times, right? We consider it bia already when the atara goes into the woman and touches the woman. The atara is called the corona. The male penis is considered the corona. It's interesting. I never even knew that was called a corona. Does it have any relationship to the coronavirus? I have no idea. Obviously, I don't know. You can tell me what you think, whatever. But it's called the corona. Our school uses the word corona. So you should be chayav many more times, right? For the tchilas bia, gemar bia, must be al de'koach rishon chakash v'chanabi the bia rishon chakash must be the gemar zon according to the rabbanon that behel nechad you're chayav only once. You only chayav for the first time. Amalei Rav Nachman. Rav said to Rav Nachman, top of lamadal and beis v'hatamar bia rishona yabra. We have a klal that you can't become pregnant from the first bia. Tamar, the first time she had bia, she was a virgin until she was with Yehuda. Yeah, bro. I'm like Tamar etzba. Mia, the Gemara's going to challenge this before. She had previous husbands. Tamar, how was she not married? How was she a virgin? I'm like Tamar etzba miyacha. The answer is back. Tamar actually took out her hymen, her basulim. She wanted to become pregnant. She wanted to quickly become pregnant as possible. She knew that you would become pregnant from the first bia, so she took out her hymen. So therefore, she got pregnant. Tamar Shman. In the yeshiva of Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak said about the yeshiva of Rebbe that they would call women that did this, that took out their hymen by themselves voluntarily, they would call them Tamar. Why? Why do they call them Tamar? Al-Shem Tamar Shem Miyacha Be'etzba. That's what she did. So the same thing. V'ahavu Erva Onan. The Gemara says, what do you mean? She was married to 2 other husbands before her. The Gemara says, Erva Onan Shem Shelo Kedarcha. I mean, they came in from behind, took us to the woman, and not from the front. So therefore, they never removed the hymen. So in Meisive call Esther Ma'arba Chodesh Dash from Hizar Mechutz, David Reblazer Machlokes by a woman who's meinika, who's nursing, right? It's known that if a woman becomes pregnant when she's nursing, right, she's not able to nurse as well. The milk dries up, not completely, but a little bit. The baby's not going to get as much as he can. So therefore, normally you need to to nurse a baby for 24 months. So therefore, when you're boel in those 24 months, Rebbe Lezer gives a heter to dash bifnim, meaning start the sexual act to go inside. And when you're ready to ejaculate, to go outside the woman and not go inside. So she shouldn't become pregnant. It'll be a sakana for the child. That's the Rebbe Lezer shita. Amalei, the Rabbanan said to him, halal einan el k'mais erva onan. It's mice like erva onan. Erva onan. And that's what they did. They went in. They went dash bifnim mizar mechutz. So the Rabbanan says it's a terrible thing. It's like mice erva onan. The Torah criticizes it. So how could we be allowed to do over there? So you just have to rely on a miracle. The Rabbanan say that she shouldn't become pregnant. So the Gemara says. So you see, if erva onan was not coming from behind, it was that they went inside and they were zara b'chutz, which Rashi says al Torah. So the Gemara says, "K'ma'is erva onan v'lo k'ma'is erva onan." It was like the ma'is erva onan, but not exactly like ma'is erva onan. K'ma'is erva onan nichsev yabim ba el ishachav shichis artza, right? Like they did. They were shichis artza. V'lo k'ma'is erva onan dilo hasam z'shlo gedarka v'hacha gedarka. There by erva onan, they did it from behind. Masha Ein Kain, what the Rabbanan are talking to Rebbe Lezer is talking about going in a natural way from the front, but not finishing, not ejaculating inside. So it's a question of what the Gemara is saying over here. It seems to be the way article on. I think a lot of the Mefarshim explain is that the Gemara says K'maisa Erva Onan, Lo K'maisa Erva Onan, is that Maisa Erva Onan, they came from behind and they ejaculated inside from behind. So it's just similar. It's just an abnormal way of bia. And also, Zara B'Fin, if you do it naturally and you ejaculate outside, that would be the same thing. Doesn't sound like that from the Gemara. And also, be a problem in Rashi al Torah. He's mafarish one thing over here, and he's mafarish a different thing. And the Ma'aser Ona in his Pirush al Torah, the mafarish will talk about that. We'll talk about it in Yevamos ben Sion to really get into that. So, Bishlam Onan D'chsiv Beveshich Hizar. It says in the pasuk that he did that. He did it abnormally. Al Er Minolan. Amarav Nachmar Yitzad D'chsiv Yevamos Gamoso. It says, why does it say he also died? Gamoso. Afhu Ba'oso Misa Mace. He died for the same reason because Shich Hizar. It's like Bishlam Onan Mishum Lo Hayalo Zera. Lo Hayah Ona was a second brother. He didn't want to give a name for his brother, his deceased brother. He knew this idea of Yibum, that the child would be a replacement for the deceased father. Ella Er, the first husband, my time Avarachi. Why didn't he do a natural bia? He didn't want her to become pregnant and ruin her beauty. Tana Rabbanan. Osa Prat Lakala, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda Machlokas, in a pasuk over here, it says, there's a pasuk in the Torah. It says that a man and a woman are together, natural bia, naturally together, they have to go to the mikvah. It's a complete bia. So the Brisa excludes, the pasuk excludes certain cases. Osa Prat Lakala, the first bia with a kala, she doesn't have to go to the mikvah because it's just to remove the hymen. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim say, no, Prat Shlo Kedarka. They say if you're ball from behind, Shlo Kedarka, so then you don't have to go to the mikvah. Amarle Hon brother of Nachman, Hon the son of Nachman, the Rav Nachman, his father. Lema Kasava Rabbi Yehuda Torah Chasa D'Chite Kala. The reason the Torah exempted it is because she obviously, when she gets married, she beautifies herself with perfume and makeup and all these things. And she go to the mikvah after the first night. She has to go to the mikvah to matah herself. So she's going to ruin all these fancy lip gloss and lipstick and blush and whatever they put on themselves. Amarle Lefisha Ena Isha Mizaberes and Bia Rishona. So the real reason is because she can't become, you just break the hymen, you can't become misembarrassed. It's not Shechva Zera. Whereas Michael Mifli, that's about to say Shechva Zera. Michael Mifli, what are they arguing about? Rabbanan Sabri, Shechva Zera, it says Shechva Zera in the pasuk Prat La'ara. Shechva Zera means just exempt a man touching his aver, his penis touching the woman's area, vagina, that without ejaculating, that would not warrant going to the mikvah. Osa, the meat Osa, probably Shlo Kedarka. Has to be her. If he does Shlo Kedarka, that's not the normal way of doing it. He comes from behind, that's not going to make him go to the mikvah. Yehuda Savar Shlo Kedarka, V'ara Mishikva Zera now. Yehuda learns both Shlo Kedarka and Ara are not called Shikva Zera. Osa comes an extra Osa, probably Kala teaches that the first Bia is exempt from going to the mikvah. Kiasa Rabbi Amr Yochanan Lo Shasa Achar Baila, any woman who waited. All right, you know what? We're going to stop here. I hope you enjoyed today's shiur. Stay tuned for Yevamos ben Sion coming up right now, and it's just really important halachic matter. It's going to get every married couple, or even if you're not married, you should know it before you get married. Welcome to Yevamos coming up right now.